Karen, your video's not on. I can't see your beautiful face. There you are.
Because I'm eating and I don't want you to watch me eating.
That's okay. You can turn your video off.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, I just had I fell asleep on the couch, and you know when you fall asleep on the couch and then you wake up and my face gets so hot.
Oh my
and
God.
so red.
Hi, Karen.
Hey, Daria.
Hello. Hey, Arky. Hi,
Hey,
Anna.
dinner.
Yeah, I'm making dinner, so I'm gonna switch off
oh.
my video and my volume.
So
I'll be listening to you.
So good, so good. Okay, we're getting lots of people in here. That's great. And then I can mute you all soon.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute myself.
Oh, hi everybody. Mute all except me.
What?
Okay. I think I can automatically make sure people are muted when they sign in too. Yes, there we go. Okay, let's get back to this, Sherry. And see a couple more people come on. Get rid of this. There. All right. Hi, everybody. Hi, Phil. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started on schedule, and people will probably show up in the middle of this, and that's totally fine. If there, I see it already blinking, there is a question section here. If you guys want to just add something in the chat, if you have any questions along the way, then you can absolutely kind of just pop into that chat. I might not get to it right away because I might not even notice it's blinking, but I'll try and answer all your questions. So, welcome. I hope you guys had and are having an awesome day. My day today has been actually quite good. I like to be as transparent as possible with how my days are going. If you guys did the pillow talk with me on Monday, didn't have a great day. Usually it kind of like trends where like my beginning of the week just seems to be like I'm trying to get my head right, trying to get like things done, trying to be really productive Monday, Tuesday, and then I get into a groove Wednesday. So today was good. It was beautiful out. I hope you guys are having a good day too. So welcome to the Stress and Nutrition webinar. I think and hope that this webinar benefits a lot of you in more than one way. I've structured it so that there's something here for everybody. Whether you're looking to dive into the biological aspects of stress, so more stress hormones, hormone production, the effects of stress on the body, or if you're looking to just take something away, some actionable items that you can then start implementing into your daily routines. I think that you guys are going to, I really hope that you guys are going to benefit from this over the next 45 minutes. I did this webinar this morning and it was like on the dot an hour, but these guys had a couple questions along the way and I got sidetracked. So you guys are more than welcome to ask questions, but I might limit you just so we can keep this in an hour. So before we get started, I wanted to say again that this is a totally open webinar. Feel free to ask questions and chime in. This is recorded as well, so you guys will get an email from me tomorrow morning, giving you some things, some articles, some resources that I reference in this webinar. So look out for that tomorrow. So I'll be sending you a keynote of this as well. So here's a little bit about me, just so you guys know who's speaking to you right now. I mean, you guys know me as like Robyn, the CrossFit coach, the one who yells at me all the time and tells me to like, you know, squeeze my butt and stuff. Like, so above and beyond that, my name is Robyn, of course. I've been coaching CrossFit for about 5 years, and then went into business with Dan, who's on here. His video is not there, but say hi, Dan. A lot of you, some of you might know him. And, you know, credentials are important, being a nutritionist, being a nutrition coach, but when it comes to a topic like stress, it really comes down to having experience, in my opinion, and having been coaching CrossFit in this environment for 5 years downtown Toronto. The gym gets really busy with people of all different occupations, all different lifestyles, and all sorts of stress. So since you guys are a part of the gym, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The gym tends to be a place where people let off steam. And as a coach, we get to see that firsthand. So, you know, you guys have the kind of experience of being in the gym for an hour, you're focused, you're in and out, and you want to get that workout in. For us as coaches, and I'm sure Daria and Dan and all the coaches can attest to this, we can see your life from the outside and kind of see everything going on. And when you guys are having a bad day, we can tell. So we see you guys a lot and we get to know you guys pretty well. As a nutrition coach, I've been able to dive into this, dive deeper into this, working with people one-on-one. And I've been fortunate enough to work with hundreds of people and helping them create balance in their lifestyle and manage their stress a little bit better. So let's get right into what sort of stress food combinations we're going to be talking about today. Now, of course, stress is quite a loaded topic, and the severity, the kind, the scale, it can all range so greatly. What we won't be discussing today is more of the emotional eating, the disordered eating, and disordered eating itself has quite a broad range. And we can save that for another rainy day. I think that is such a loaded topic in itself that if you guys are interested in that, we can definitely do a webinar. But what we'll be talking about today is a more of a direct relationship between how foods can physically cause us stress, and then also on the flip side, how stress can build negative habits around food. Now, why this is such a complicated issue is it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? And, you know, stress can cause bad relationships with food, and a bad relationship with food can cause stress. And when they get all intertwined, it's like, holy shit, like, how do I stop this in its tracks? And how do I get a handle on this? So maybe one of these above sound like you, or on the screen sound like you. And if it does, I mean, don't feel ashamed. They're so common, right? And all these things come in waves. Some days are better than others. Some weeks are better than others, of course. But as I kind of mentioned, it's important to understand the breakdown of this and how these combinations are tied together. So let's kind of read through these. I work too many hours in the day and I can't focus on what I eat. This one is like so common. It's, you know, the typical busy, I work 60, 70 hours a week, then I'm focusing on my next client, my next meeting, my next whatever deadline. Last thing I can do is plan my meals, or, you know, look ahead, you know, half a day and figure out what I'm going to have for lunch. The next one, it's, you know, I eat what's easy and convenient for me to get through the day, but then I feel regret, maybe like I failed the day, a little bit of remorse, or even physical discomfort. So not only can just eating what's convenient cause, you know, a negative mentality around what you ate, but of course, if you're kind of just grabbing not the greatest foods all the time, you're going to be potentially feeling some physical discomfort in the middle of the day when you're trying to be productive. When I feel sad, blue, lonely, anxious, I like to eat something that makes me feel better. I think we can all relate to this on some level, okay? Even if it's just you had a bad day and all you want is a beer, right? That is kind of the same thing here. And then after I eat certain foods, I feel tired or anxious and I just want to take a nap. So if you've had any experience with this, then I think the next half hour will help you guys out. So understanding this is the first step into taking action. Okay, so a good example, and I told kind of this morning to the group, a good example would be a sports injury. And I like telling you guys this because as CrossFitters and like athletes, you know, you can probably relate to this. I remember, and some of you know if you've been to the gym for a long time, I had shoulder surgery back in 2015. Okay, and I remember leading up to my surgery when I was having like pain, discomfort. My shoulder was even like dislocating. I could barely put a barbell up overhead. It was the most frustrating 6 months of my life. And and what was so frustrating about it was that I didn't know what was going on. Okay, so I was waiting for my MRI, finally got my MRI, I got the results back, you need surgery. And, you know, when you hear those words, you would think like, oh shit, okay, there's another year of recovery. But I remember feeling really relieved. I remember feeling like, okay, I have these issues, have this issue, and I know exactly what steps I need to take next in order to make this better. Okay, so hearing those words come from the doctor's mouth was a little bit of closure more than anything. And it was just, you know, it felt good to understand what was happening. So same kind of thing here, understanding ourselves better and understanding food better will help us create a plan and understand the next steps to building a better relationship with food. So let's talk about our first pairing first. And the first pairing is how food will affect our stress. The quality of nourishment, so nutrients in the diet, and physical activity, sorry, my window's open if you hear trucks in the background, and physical activity has impact on proper functioning of the body. Second point there, implementation of lifestyle approaches and dietary habits is an extremely powerful way to reduce stress cortisol levels and minimize inflammation. Now, this is just like a fancy way in saying that good food and proper exercise equals a healthier us, right? We all know this. In this case, a healthier us is a stress-free or a stress-managed us with little to no inflammation. All right, let's get into the 3 groups of foods that we're going to be talking about today. As I'm sure you already guessed, I call them the cortisol crew. Thought it was funny. So, as you probably guessed, these 3 probably are our biggest culprits in increasing stress levels and inflammation. Now, of course, this is quite general, as people will respond to all sorts of different foods in different ways. So, you know, I'm not going to be talking about any food sensitivities today, but it's always important to make sure that you are aware of any food allergies or intolerances, as these can and will cause an increased and an inflammatory response in the body. So if you have some adverse reactions or negative reactions to anything, even if it's just small, a great example is I get like a runny nose and like a weird headache when I have dairy. And and it kind of comes in waves. So I generally stay away from dairy. And that's not to say that dairy is negative at all. It just, doesn't work well with me, as I'm sure a lot of people as well. So the 3 we have here: caffeine, high sugar and high fat foods, and alcohol. We have a general understanding of what these foods or beverages do to us, right? How they make us feel. But do we actually know what's happening at a biological level? That doesn't look right. Okay, I'll read it. I don't know what happened to my slide there. So I'll read it so you guys can get it. So let's start with caffeine. To be very clear, guys, I had 2 cups of coffee this morning, so I'm not here to bash coffee or get you to hop off drinking a coffee or 2 in the morning, okay? There are many, many benefits to having, a coffee in the morning as like a daily routine. It can build structure into your morning. It can boost productivity. If you guys know DK, he has he looks at coffee as like this ritual in the morning. So there's definitely positive things that come from that structure. It can boost productivity. It can boost energy. It's also a really wicked pre-workout if you're working out, in the morning or midday. However, we all know that too much of a good thing, there is too much of a good thing. And for some people, caffeine can cause more damage than good. So the first point that you can't see there, of course, caffeine acts as a stimulant. It causes the adrenal glands to release our stress hormone, cortisol, which may or may not already be increased due to other pre-existing stress in the body. Okay, so if you're someone who might be chronically stressed out to begin with and then looks towards a cup of coffee to keep productivity high, and maybe keep you from falling asleep at work, then you can kind of see where the issue gets built there. Since you may have already cortisol in the system, then you look towards a coffee to help you be a little bit more productive. Cortisol increases, and then you're just at a kind of a higher level of where you really need to be for the rest of the day. Second, caffeine consumption may reduce the sleep quality and quantity, which we know, which can contribute to insomnia, which makes it harder for our body to deal with stress. So if you guys are sleeping less than 7 to 8 hours a night, your body will have a harder time dealing with managing your cortisol levels. And also, we all know that we get a little bit more irritable when we're tired, and that can play a huge factor in it as well. Now, the last point there is pretty interesting. High levels of caffeine consumption can also cause high levels of magnesium excretion from the body and may deplete magnesium. If you didn't know this, magnesium is a required cofactor for over 300 enzymatic reactions, and we need it for energy production. So yes, caffeine gives us energy to a certain point, but after that, it can actually be a culprit in causing us to feel lethargic or tired, right? And then we reach for more coffee because we think we need more coffee, right? Instead of actually understanding what's potentially happening. So it's a vicious cycle here. We're tired, we reach for a coffee, then the depletion of magnesium increases, and then, it's a vicious cycle. So 1 to 2 cups of coffee a day. We're going to get into the next slide, which is best practices. Okay, so if you have ever taken or participated in the Bodzii Lifestyle Challenge, then you will probably recognize the first point there, the first bullet point, because this was a requirement for the participants of the challenge. So we want to limit caffeine intake to under 400 milligrams per day. This is equivalent to, not for venti-sized coffees, I don't have my cup in front of me. This is equivalent to 4 times 250 milliliters of coffee, okay? Like a good sized cup in the morning is probably like 1.5 to 2 of these already. If you are a tea drinker, or maybe if you're not, like maybe try and ease your way into tea. You can absolutely alternate between tea and coffee. Try and keep no caffeine after 2 p.m. And then if you really want coffee after 2 p.m., go for a decaf, right? Decaf does have a little bit of caffeine in it, definitely not the amount that a regular coffee has. So try and stick to these practices. At the very end of this webinar, I'll be giving you kind of 3 actionable items to take away, and we'll be retouching on coffee. Okay. Alrighty. Next slide. Continuing on, we have these, there we go. Okay, let's move on from caffeine to the cortisol culprit, number 2, the high sugar and high fat food. Okay, above and beyond the obvious side effects of what you might think of high sugary, high fat foods, there are other things that we could better understand when we eat these things. So what's happening to ourselves? Of course, we can think of sugar rushes, increased heart rate, general sluggishness, lethargy, tiredness. Crushing a pizza in the middle of the day and then wondering why you don't feel as productive after, it shouldn't be a huge surprise, right? I think we can all kind of understand that on some level. But this, of course, goes beyond pizza. Processed foods, high-fat cheeses, high-fat dairies, butters, oils, baked goods, chips, snack foods, high-sodium foods especially are a big one. These are all things that can make some pretty drastic things happen inside the body. So let's go through these 3 points here. Excess consumption of high sugar foods causes unstable blood sugar levels that is understood as stress by the body. Okay, so this is another thing that will release cortisol from our HPA, our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. You just need to know HPA, okay? That is what secretes our cortisol, right? Second point, of course, it leads to irritability and increased food craving. So after you have like a sugary meal, don't you just feel like you want another sugary meal like immediately the next day, right? It's honestly an addiction. And of course, this can put a strain on the body. High levels of processed foods, high sugar and fat, is associated with a 58% higher risk of depression compared to the whole food dietary pattern group. Okay, that's quite a high percentage. You'll see HPA come up a bit throughout the next couple slides. And this is a pretty powerful little guy in our body. Continuing on, we can see that with these three things that there is an association with stress and cortisol levels, right? That kind of direct association with fatty and sugary foods. It's another slippery slope that we can kind of get ourselves into when we start eating these high sugar, high fat foods when stressed out. Our appetite for these things increases. And because we're already stressed out, cortisol is already being secreted. And then we eat these things to get more, so cortisol gets secreted due to high blood sugar, etc. And the cycle unfortunately keeps going until we can deal with our stress at the root level. So just going over these 3 points here, processed foods contain high levels of oxidized fats, which can block the production of essential fatty acids and inhibits their health protection effect. Fat, as we all know, is super important. Our brain is mostly made up of fat, and we need those things to be working optimally in order for us to be clear-minded, productive, alert throughout the day. High cortisol levels are associated with consumption of low-quality foods, of course, right? And in stressful situations, the appetite for a sweet or fatty meal rises, right? And as I just said, consumption of those meals also induces an increase in cortisol levels. How are y'all doing? Just give me a quick thumbs up. Not too much information being thrown at you? Okay. Oh, all right. And lastly, guys, we have alcohol. Oh, let's go back a sec. I think I missed a slide. It's turning black. I don't know what's wrong with my my slides today, but I'm gonna talk a little bit about something. And the slide was just a quote. Okay, you're not missing anything big, but it was just a quote. And so before we move on to alcohol, I want to tell you a story about someone that I worked with closely. And the quote on there says, the only time that I was able to really see physical changes in my body was when I dealt with my stress, when I start to deal with the root cause. She also continued to say that, you know, where I needed help was to figure out where the stress was coming from. And so this is exactly what we needed to teach this person. Now, this woman, she loves her job. She works a lot. She knew that she was stressed out often. And that wasn't a surprise to her. And it definitely wasn't a surprise to me when I first started chatting with her. The thing with this woman, though, is that she kept looking to make these drastic changes in her life in order to fix the stress problem. So she would say things like, oh, I just need to cut back my hours at work. But she didn't want to cut back her hours at work because she loved her job. Or she would say, I just need to focus on getting a better sleep and then I'll be fine. The reality was this person was already sleeping well. She was getting her 7 to 8 hours. Okay, she focused and got a good quality sleep. She rarely woke up in the middle of the night. So what we noticed, when we kind of like looked in a little bit further, and I asked her to track her day and her eating patterns, you know, she was having 4 cups of coffee a day. She was having 1 or 2 past 3 p.m. She was eating takeout at the office because she had one of those like offices that have like a full spread of everything delivered to them every day. She had this habit of going out and getting like a gelato at lunch with her girlfriend as she would kind of walk around on her lunch break, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a couple other things there. Now, this woman, she's not an unhealthy person. She worked out, she went on long walks. She made her dinner almost every evening, but the excess caffeine and sugar throughout the day were starting to give her these kind of anxiety spurts and stress spurts, and she couldn't really put her finger on why. And that's why she was just automatically going to the big things that she needed to change: her work, her sleep. So we made a little bit of change. We cut out the 4th coffee. Okay, we swapped the third for a green tea. We got her to start bringing some Greek yogurt and some homemade treats to work. And in as short as 7 days, like 1 week, no word of lie, her anxiety was down, stress levels were drastically decreased. She felt better about her job, her exercise, and like a huge bonus. And the reason why she came to me in the first place was she was losing weight. And we needed to make sure that these things were under control. Her stress was under control before her body could actually respond positively to weight loss. Okay, so if anybody here is looking to make body composition changes, your body will resist change. Okay, it wants to stay in homeostasis all of the time, but especially when it is stressed out. Okay, so now we can move on to alcohol. We all know it, we all love it. Don't get me wrong, I have a wine rack behind me that's completely stocked. So just like caffeine, not here to tell you to not drink alcohol, right? I won't do that. I'll be very clear in saying that a glass of wine here and there allows you to stay consistent with your diet, then please have that glass of wine. But with that said, again, we do need to know what happens when we drink alcohol so that we can better understand the insides, right? What's happening inside. So let's go through these points pretty quickly. Chronic alcohol consumption activates the HPA, which we've talked about already. And what does the HPA do? Releases cortisol, okay? It can exacerbate anxiety when under stress and is associated with a decreased serotonin levels in the body. So we have all probably heard this before. Alcohol is a depressant, right? And this is why, because it will decrease that happy chemical or that happy hormone that's contributed to well-being and happiness. And again, contributes to increased anxiety. Now, this is pretty straightforward stuff, but above and beyond that, it's important to understand, guys, what alcohol does to us mentally as well. And I'm saying this as active people who I know have goals. Okay, I know all of you come to the gym and you work hard and you're still on 416 online because you have specific goals and you're working with your accountability coach and you're going through the motions day in and day out. Alcohol can and will prevent us from losing weight, just as I kind of mentioned with stress. It will also prevent us from recovering after a workout. It will prevent us from sleeping well, and the list kind of goes on. When those things happen, we hit a mental roadblock. There's nothing more stressful and frustrating than trying to see progress and not seeing it when we're working hard. Okay, this is the literal definition of being in a rut. It's like, why am I stuck? Okay, I'm not moving forward. What's going on? And as we all know, ruts are stressful. Plateaus are stressful. The tricky thing about alcohol is that when ingested, the body registers it as a toxin. Okay, so our fat metabolism, which is running for all of us right now, we're kind of chilling out, we're sitting, everyone's fat metabolism is running the majority of the time. If I were to have a glass of wine right now, my fat metabolism would shut down and we would start trying to burn alcohol as our main source of fuel. Because our fat metabolism is at a halt, everything that we're consuming above and beyond the calories of the alcohol are no longer being burned as energy either. So it's very easy to double down on caloric intake when we're drinking, resulting in slower weight loss if that's your goal, right? Resulting in plateauing, a rut, and ultimately being stressed out. Okay, so we've covered the three cortisol culprits. Okay, so if you guys need to stand up and stretch it out, like feel free to just stretch it out. I've been sitting for about 40 minutes now, well, half an hour. Let's go into talking about an anti-inflammatory diet or an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Okay? Chronic stress and systemic inflammation causes elevated cortisol levels, as we probably have put together already. If we can naturally lower the inflammation in the body and decrease the stress, diminished cortisol levels will follow, okay, resulting in decreased chronic stress and an overall improved wellness. Now, we can choose to follow an anti-inflammatory or low inflammatory diet. and maximizing these anti-inflammatory foods, and of course, minimizing the pro-inflammatory ones. So let's kind of go through this list here and go over it together. So we have caffeine and alcohol. We've covered, quite well over the past couple slides. So the next one there is your high glycemic load food. So this can contribute to inflammation for sure. High GI foods. So I will send this to you, and this is one of the resources that I was talking about earlier on. In your email tomorrow, I will send you an article in there that talks about like breaking down the glycemic index and the glycemic load. Okay, but essentially a diet that is high or rich in high GI foods will cause inflammation. So if you're kind of looking at all of the carbohydrates, they are put on a scale, okay? And that scale determines how fast, how rapidly, and how easily that particular food in a specific quantity will spike your blood sugar. Okay, so you can think of like high glycemic index foods. I mean, the highest being table sugar will spike your blood sugar very drastically, and then your blood sugar will fall quite rapidly afterwards, right? The low to medium glycemic index foods that we want to be consuming will digest slowly, they'll absorb slowly, and will do really minimal things to our blood sugar and will kind of keep us at a good level. We have saturated and trans fats. Now, luckily, in Canada, trans fats they don't exist anywhere, which is great. I was talking to a crew in the States this morning, and this is still a real thing for them. So making sure that we're avoiding saturated and trans fats. Anything lacking in micronutrients and antioxidants. And the next one is common, and we always forget about it, the low fiber diet. This can definitely contribute to inflammation. So let's make sure, if you guys are tracking your food, I think your accountability coach told you guys to track your food for a couple days, maybe a couple days back. And if you've been doing that on MyFitnessPal, you can track your fiber. We should be getting anywhere from like 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. And of course, a sedentary lifestyle will contribute to inflammation. And on the other side, of course, right, these are things that we can do to minimize inflammation, right? Low glycemic load, eliminating trans fats, lowering saturated fats, reducing your alcohol, nuts, seeds, whole fruits, beans to increase your fiber. If you guys are not already taking a omega-3 fatty acid or just omega-3 supplement, let's try and incorporate that into your morning routine. Okay, so with breakfast, you guys can take anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 milligrams, or 1 to 3 grams of omega-3 supplement, and that will just help balance out the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. Our body has a lot of omega-6 in it. We find it in a lot of foods, and this is a really high inflammatory fatty acid. We need it. It's completely necessary. It's not bad by any means, but what is bad is the ratio that is occurring in our body of omega-3 to omega-6. And then, of course, regular physical activity and reducing your caffeine intake. Okay. All right. So let's go shift gears. Okay, so we talked a lot about how particular foods will affect our stress. Now we can kind of shift the two, or switch the two, and talk about how stress will affect our food choices. So the fun thing about this stress ball is that, like I said, we don't really know what comes first, right? The whole chicken or the egg thing. Food choices affect stress, stress affects food, and it goes on and on. The thing about stress is that we all respond to it in different ways, right? Some of us will overeat, some of us will aggressively undereat, and I will get into why. Both of these things have a severe negative impact on our homeostasis, which I said our body loves, and ultimately our progress. So just going through the slide here, stress is an important factor in the development of addiction to hyperpalatable foods, so high fat, high sugar foods, and may possess addictive qualities which can contribute to an increased risk for obesity and other metabolic diseases, right? So metabolic diseases, type 2 diabetes, of course, okay? uncontrollable stress changes eating patterns and consumption of these hyperpalatable foods, which could lead to changes in homeostasis and trigger a neurobiological adaptation. Okay. Now, there are many areas in the body that help us make conscious, good decisions about food. When these things are not functioning at their best, we can feel like we want things or crave things that our body doesn't really need. And that's simply because there are some key things that need to be functioning well that just aren't. Okay, so our first one is our HPA axis, the gland that releases cortisol, right? High stress equals high cortisol equals cravings, to put very, very simply. The second point there talks about how chronic stress can affect our glucose metabolism, right? So our glucose metabolism, and if that is affected, it will create insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance, okay? Ultimately, this will cause hyperinsulinemia and hyperglycemia. So what is insulin resistance? Put plainly, it's when cells are resistant to insulin and stop responding to that hormone, which is secreted by our pancreas. So basically, we want the cells to absorb insulin and glucose so that I can ultimately flush it out. If the cell doors do not let those two things in, the insulin and glucose starts to circulate in the bloodstream. Okay, ultimately, like I said, hyperinsulinemia and hyperglycemia, if you see those big words there, to break it down very simply, we know hyper means too much, okay? Insulin or glyce in the second word. So we have insulin, of course, and then glucose in the second word. And then emia is blood. So broken down, these words literally mean too much insulin in the blood or too much glucose in the blood, which are, precursors to precursors to type 2 diabetes. Third bullet point there is chronic stress and how it affects our appetite regulating hormones. There are two appetite regulating hormones. They are ghrelin and they are leptin. Every time I think about those two things, I think of them as like little cartoons, and they kind of determine whether our stomach is hungry or full. So our hunger regulating hormones can seem a little bit out of whack when we're too high and when we're too high stress. And so I mentioned before that some people respond to stress by eating too much. And that's because chronic stress has elevated their ghrelin levels, okay? And your ghrelin is what causes you or kind of sends signals from your brain to your stomach, giving it like the gurgles and stuff like that. If you are somebody who responds to stress by not eating at all, that means your ghrelin has been suppressed and your leptin levels are quite high. So you never feel hungry, right? You just can go forever and not eat. You're that person that forgets to eat, okay? And then your hypothalamic neuropeptides, which are the peptides that regulate feeding and appetite regulating centers in the brain. So very closely tied to your appetite regulating hormones, ghrelin and leptin. Okay, health stress effects part 2. Okay. Oh, no, go back. I was trying to move you guys. All your beautiful faces are sometimes in the way of my screen, so I get to look at you guys instead of. Okay. Lastly, one of the most relatable and apparent points here is the fact that stress can increase the body's sensitivity to reward, which is quite interesting. So the mesolimbic dopaminergic system, mouthful, which is the brain region that is involved in stress and motivation circuits, or AKA the reward pathway. So this is kind of cool, and you can nerd out on this if you Google this, because it's pretty interesting. These can synergistically increase the body's sensitivity to reward, and we're more likely to reward ourselves when we are chronically stressed out. So this is where the classic, I had the longest day at work, my boss is an a-hole, give me a pizza, right? And that's what it comes down to. It will change our food preference and increase that drive, that need for those hyperpalatable foods. Okay. So what's interesting, this is our last slide here, so we're almost wrapping it up, guys, but I just want to say one more thing about what's interesting about that last slide. So at a biological level, something is happening in the circuits in our brain that force us to seek out these foods when we're feeling stressed. So let's just kind of think about that for a second. This doesn't always, and rarely actually, will come down to you feeling weak or emotional, and that's just it, right? That's not the answer. When you want to eat something because you feel a certain way, there's a reason why that's happening. And this is why emotional and stress eating is such a huge obstacle for so many people, because it's literally about rewiring the brain and creating habits that will break these responses that are happening. Okay, so understanding this, guys, is so important, and taking the first steps to disconnecting that way too close tie of stress and food. Okay, so you have lots of information now. Okay, cool, Rob. Thanks for like everything, but what do I do now? Okay, what are the actionable items that you can take away and actually put some things to good practice? The first one, plan out your meals. You all know I love meal prep, dedicating time to meals, right? We all know that there's so many benefits to meal planning when it comes to consistency, but what about meal planning when it comes to helping us relieve stress? When your meals are planned ahead of time, you're not scrambling, right? You don't reach for the easiest thing. You're not reaching into your pantry for the salty, crunchy goodness. Planning meals will also help you make conscious decisions on what to eat when you feel less anxious and less stressed. So included in that little note there, I wrote dedicating actual time to eating. So Karen, I know you're eating right now, listening to this, but I'll cut you some slack. What I'm about to say, if you're eating in front of your computer, stop, right? If you're eating in front of the TV, stop. If you're eating while you're texting your mom or your sister-in-law or like whatever, just stop. Try and dedicate actual time to your meal and just your meal, okay? Your digestive system works its best when you're in a parasympathetic state. That means chill, cool, calm, relaxed, no distractions. You want your body to be absorbing as many nutrients as possible, and it can't do that when you're stressed out. It can't do that when there's, maybe someone, your boss, yelling at you. So I know this doesn't apply right now, but when you get back to work, right, try not to have lunch at your desk, okay? You can lose, actually, guys, up to 15% of a food's nutrients just by eating while cortisol is being released, okay? So let's make sure, actionable item number one, moving forward, try and dedicate time to your meals. The second is to 3 days, okay? Take it, test it, see for yourself. 5 days. Take the next 5 days to reduce sugar, caffeine, alcohol, processed foods, okay? It's just 5 days, and I want you to try and see how your body feels, see how your mind feels. Your productivity should increase, your energy should increase. If you're going through that mid-afternoon slump or you're having a nap, you should be able to get through that feeling more productive, and at the end of the day, feeling a little more accomplished, relaxed, and calm. And the last one here, take 5 and walk it off. Now this applies 2 ways. If you're about to order a pizza or order Chinese food or dive into a tray of cupcakes, just take 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes, go outside for a walk. If you want to go lap around your house, you can do that too. In that 5 minutes, you should have maybe taken a few breaths, talked yourself out of it. Maybe you want pizza, and that's fine. Maybe you make it yourself instead of ordering in, okay? So you're avoiding that high saturated and really, really salty meal. Let's say you did order pizza. I'm not mad, fine. If you really want a pizza, that's great. I love pizza, and I order it sometimes too. Probably more than sometimes. But after, take 5 minutes and walk it off. Now, this isn't in like, I'm trying to get rid of the calories that I just ate, or I'm trying to burn off the calories I just ate, and you're not punishing yourself by taking 5 minutes and walking off, but you want to get moving after to de-stress, because as we've learned over the past 50 minutes, is that high-fat food is releasing cortisol as we speak, right? And you need to counteract it as soon as and as best as possible. So even if it's not a walk, do some stretching, do some mobility, hop into a pillow talk, right? At 9 o'clock every night, with one of the awesome 416 coaches. Was that a good plug, Dan? Okay, and make sure that you are trying to counteract that spike or that rapid increase in cortisol from what you just ate by just chilling out a little bit, and that might help, right? So these are your 3 items, guys. Super, super simple things, right? They're not overly complicated. It's just a matter of kind of buckling down and doing them. If you have any kind of questions about what we talked about today, if you have any personal issues or anything, I mean, there's my email. You guys know how to reach me too. Luckily with you guys, you can just tag me on Facebook or hop into my Facebook Messenger, and we can chat more about it. That's my presentation. That's my webinar. Hope you guys liked it. I hope you learned something. I can unmute you now. If you guys have any questions at all, please go ahead and shout them out. Or just that was awesome, because I could use that.
Great way to get here. What's my favorite thing? Tropical. Be more specific.
Someone's in the background. I'm just going to go ahead and mute you guys again because I can hear things, but I don't know who's speaking. So yeah, I'm going to email this to you guys, and that's it. Thank you guys so much for coming. Make sure to tune into Pillow Talk tonight. Make sure that you come into our class tomorrow at 6 p.m. You guys are awesome. I have a question popping up. Oh, everyone's just saying thanks. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to sign off here. You guys can sign off too. Get yourself a good meal in today, and we will chat soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Y'all have
Thanks. Bye.